Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
There's the front of the Sunday Telegraph with the Bercow story that you heard on the news. It was their recording and they've splashed on it. Also a great picture from the extraordinary rugby match, Wales against England, much covered in the papers today. It was Wales's right until the last moment, an amazing game that. The Observer has, again, a story you've heard about on the news, the gay relationships row inside the Church of England, and again, the rugby on the front page. The Sunday Times, rugby again, but they've got a story about a secret search for a new Labour leader, they say, and this is based on internal party work, putting to polls of voters different possible future Labour leaders, and much more besides. A rather different political story, the Mail on Sunday, Diane Abbott and David Davis had an encounter, which is much discussed, talked about, analysed, etc., in the Mail on Sunday. In the House of Commons, we'll be talking about that later on. Much more in the papers, but I think those are the essences of the story. Let's start, Laura, if we could, with the Sunday Telegraph story, probably the main political story of the day. Yes,
well, this is a story, again, John Bercow, who seems to believe that the rules of parliamentary neutrality do not apply to him. And coming after his outspoken remarks against President Trump, which I think brings Parliament into disrepute because he's clearly under a duty to remain neutral on these issues. He's also been found to be speaking in relation to Brexit. And of course, this has very serious implications because he'll be chairing the debates in relation to the Brexit bill. And for him to have said, you know, I voted to stay, I think puts him in an untenable position.
There's about 12, I think, Tory MPs who've already lined up a motion against him. The question is, does this story then turn that 12 into many, many more and start a process that gives him an impossible week?
Well, I think there's a moral obligation for him now to stand down because, you know, it's very important that the Speaker is seen as being neutral. And the rules are very clear. It says that he must remain politically impartial at all times. And if you want to be Speaker and, you know, you get various privileges that come with that role, then it's also your duty and responsibility to remain impartial and not pick and choose your rules as you go ahead.
A wry smile over
I think this is daft. I really do. Who possibly imagined that John Bercow didn't have an opinion? And incidentally, one of the candidates that the people who want Bercow out are saying should take over Speaker is Jacob Rees-Mogg. Of course, no one has the faintest idea what he thinks about Brexit, do they? You have an opinion, Andrew, but you're not allowed to voice it on this programme. But you will, when you go to schools, tell them what you think about things, and you won't say, I can't have an opinion about it. We rely upon you to do your job in the studio. We rely upon the Speaker to do his job
David,
in the House of Commons,
rules,
not to be a political eunuch.
The rules are very clear, though, and it's very important. There's a reason behind the rules. They're not just there for the sake of it. He's chairing the debates, so it's incredibly important that he's seen to be impartial and neutral on these issues. It doesn't say you must remain impartial and neutral while chairing the debates. It says you have to remain impartial at all times. So if he doesn't want the rules and he wants to express his opinion, of course he can have an opinion, but if he wants to express the opinion, then don't take on the role. Simply don't take on the role.
Rachel Shabby, he may be calculating, I suppose, to a certain extent, that most MPs were pro-Remain, and he relies on the support of the House of Commons. So what he said will be very unpopular in the Sunday Telegraph, very unpopular with sections of the Conservative Party, but might be very popular, actually, on the floor of the House of Commons itself.
And completely irrelevant to most of the population of the country, who probably are much more interested in your second news item about the NHS.
We'll be talking more about the NHS later in the show, but let's move to another big political story, which is the Labour story the Sunday Times has splashed on. Something or nothing, David?
Well, it's actually very difficult to tell. As far as we can I have a slight story to tell here, which is that somebody texted me this morning, or actually late last night, said this story will appear in the Sunday Times, and I can tell you where the story came from. And I said, are you sure about it? And they said, yes, it comes from John Trickett MP, who was the campaigns manager. I have to say at this point,
I think we've been told the same thing.
I can't test it. Who left this week. And therefore, the suggestion is that in addition to the normal polling that they do, that questions were asked to a focus group about a number of top Labour people, very recent Labour people, and there were some reactions taken to it. I mean, at one level, this is just a kind of further push in the long agony of the Labour Party, which is now disintegrated, effectively disintegrated, except for its capacity to fight some elections in some places and so on. At another level, it is an indicator of the fact that there is an incredible level of infighting going on, even amongst people who used to be described as Corbynistas, because I think it's pretty clear to people that he realises that his time is coming to an end.
Well, Rachel, I described you at the beginning of the show as a Corbyn supporter. Is that still the case?
I mean, I think, look, there were probably attempts to find a replacement for Corbyn pretty much since he was elected the first time round. That said, I do think it's the case that the people who did support him through two leadership elections will now be starting to feel concern, and I think that's primarily over the way that Brexit was handled. Now, we know that the Labour Party has particular difficulties around Brexit because of the way it breaks in terms of, you know, being representative of both Leavers and Remainers.
Yes.
We know that puts it in a unique situation that actually isn't very much to do with Corbyn, but we also know that, you know, that is the country, that is who we are. The Labour Party voters are who we are, and therefore that there is an opportunity to be the leaders, to be the vision, to be the unity that this country really needs. And I know it's very easy for me to sit here and say that's what should happen, and the reality is very difficult. But I think that in some way the Labour Party has squandered an opportunity to be the vision that we need to get out of.
Do you think there's any future for the Labour Party with Jeremy Corbyn as leader?
I think the Labour Party is in difficulty, and those difficulties will remain whoever is whoever is the leader, and those difficulties have to be addressed.
We see the question asked on the front page of The Observer, can anyone save the Labour Party? And one doesn't want to be apocalyptic or too extreme about this, but is it possible? Is it possible that we're actually about to see the end of the Labour Party as a national force that can win elections?
The big thing is that the electoral system enormously advantages parties, big parties, up until a tipping point. And the question is whether Labour passes beyond the tipping point, which is around about 28% and so on. Then after that, anything can happen. And we don't know the answer to that yet. But if Corbyn is leader and the present situation continues and so on until the next election, there is a very real chance that Labour will dip below the tipping point. And at that point, we can't even tell who will benefit from it.
Right. Let's turn to a story about one of Jeremy Corbyn's current supporters, Diane Abbott, who was in the House of Commons after the Brexit vote. And David Davis, the Brexit minister, came up to her, and exactly what happened is contested. But he's had some rather ungallant texts now leaked to the Mail on Sunday.
Yeah, text leaked to the Mail on Sunday suggesting, so he was blasted for, you know, actually he wasn't. What happened is that he was supposed to have tried to kiss her after the Article 50 vote last week in Parliament, and she told him to F off.
He says he was whispering in her ear, and you can see how that could be
But
mistaken.
let's look at the way this was reported. The focus was not on his attempts to kiss her, which are completely inappropriate, but on her response. And you look, whatever you think of Diane Abbott's opinions, it is the case that being black and female subjects her to a level of abuse that is just off the scale. And David Davis is a man who is a public figure, and there is a responsibility for people like him to set a tone, which he has completely failed to do in the way that he has behaved.
But I think, Rachel, you're missing the key point, is that I think it's really morally wrong to hang David Davis out to dry on what are private texts. We're all entitled to have private thoughts and private conversations with our friends. And this isn't something that he has said in public. I mean, David Davis is not your typical Tory. He was brought up by a single mom. He did very well in grammar school. He's pushing Brexit through in a calm and controlled manner. We're all entitled to, you know, a zone of privacy. And I think that, you know, he who has never texted in regret should cast the first stone here, really.
Right, yeah.
I mean, he's to say he's part of, you know, the patriarchy, I think, is absolutely ridiculous. He's a very reasonable individual. He's a very dignified person that very rarely gets involved. And this is the problem when you're leaking. When you're yeah, but it's a private conversation, and I think we all regret now and again having a private conversation. And I think that we should just let the man be, as opposed to hounding him over you know, a few words.
I was state educated, so do you think I'm entitled to go and kiss Andrew on his
Well,
ear.
that's an issue, and that's
I think
disputed.
we don't want that on camera.
I think Diane Abbott is an extremely experienced politician, and she's well able to look after herself.
But that doesn't mean she should be subjected to this.
No,
Nobody
she's not.
should.
She wasn't subjected. This was private. If somebody did something against her, she's absolutely entitled to say, take a hike, and that's what she did.
Let's jump to another man who's had some trouble with the ladies from time to time. Trump aide, says the Sunday Express, David.
Yes, this is one of a couple of stories, in fact big stories, about the Trump visit, whenever that's going to happen. People seem to have accepted that whatever they think about Mr Bercow, that there won't be an address to Parliament. And now they're talking about whether or not Trump can come to London at all. And so the couple of things that are floated, firstly in the Telegraph that he'll be sent to Birmingham, where there was a vote of 450,000 in the Brexit thing, and Leave won by 3,000, because that's supposed to be the Brexit heartland. And then an insider, and this is the Express story, in the White House, not named, has said that actually what he'd quite like to do is to do a poppy appeal from Wembley Stadium or the Cardiff Millennium Stadium, incidentally also a Remain area as it happens. I don't know what the British Legion thinks about it, but I don't think that they're going to be impressed.
This is turning out to be quite an embarrassing story for the government, because the invitation has been offered and accepted. He is coming, but now, because of what's gone on in Parliament, they've moved it away from where Parliament is sitting, we think, and out of London as well. This is supposed to make Trump feel very warm about Britain and help us get a trade deal. It's not going so well, is it, Rachel?
I mean, even Trump must be getting the message that Britain doesn't want him to come. Overwhelmingly, there has been public disapproval of this state visit.
The fact that statistics bear that out.
Hang on. The fact
I think you don't like him, Rachel, but a lot of other people are.
No, you will get a chance to respond. But the fact that he was invited, the fact that Theresa May rushed over and invited him so swiftly, was seen as embarrassing and distasteful for many. And in polling, it is shown that he's not welcome. And I find it quite amusing that, you know, the idea that he's going to get a better reception in Birmingham, you know, one of our most cosmopolitan cities, fine.
Reasonably quick response to that, Laura.
Oh, well, I just think people need to understand that you're not inviting Donald Trump as your mate over. You know, let's throw a couple of shrimps on the Barbie here. You're inviting him over in his role as President of the United States. You don't have to like him as a person, but it's probably best not to trash your national interests in public. So I think, again, what John Bercow did was wrong. You know, the US is a key ally. You're inviting him as the President of the United States. He was fairly elected. Unless you're going to dispute that, then we should all move on.
We're going to have to move on ourselves, unfortunately. David, you've got one last story from the Telegraph we're going to look at here.
This exercises me, and one of my other roles is to be chair of something called Index on Censorship, which is an organisation about freedom of expression. And the Law Society is apparently recommending a possible change in the law, a new Espionage Act, which would have the effect of criminalising the possession of official documents about the economy, if it were passed. Now,
that seems draconian, to say the least.
Now, Laura's Marr pointing out to me before we went on that actually a Law Society recommendation is a long way. Law Commission is a long way from statute and so on. But nevertheless, it is a kind of rather chilling prospect, and I hope it will go no further. And the editorial in the Telegraph says it shouldn't. I'm
going to be talking about whistleblowers and the NHS very shortly, but for now, thank you all very much indeed.
Let's take a look at what's on the front pages of the papers this morning. The Sunday Telegraph says that Speaker John Bercow is faking new criticism after revealing he voted Remain in the referendum. The Sunday Times claims Labour is carrying out secret succession planning to prepare for Jeremy Corbyn's departure. The Mail on Sunday leads on text messages sent by Brexit Secretary David Davis about the Labour MP Diane Abbott. Donald Trump is set to snub Parliament on his UK visit later this year and hold a stadium rally instead. That's in the Sunday Express. And The Observer says the Church of England is facing a fresh crisis over its position on gay relationships. Socialite Tara Palmer-Tomkinson told a friend she was ready to accept her own fate just weeks before she died, according to the Sunday Mirror. The Sun on Sunday front page claims the family of George Michael don't want his lover at his funeral. Well, to talk about all those stories and more, we're joined now by the CEO of Pimlico Plumbers, Charlie Mullins, the broadcaster, Joan Sarpong, and Deputy Editor of the Huffington Post, Owen Bennett. Hello to all of you.
Morning. Good morning.
Thanks for waking up early on your Sunday mornings to come in. Let's talk about John Bercow first, shall we? The story on the front page of the Sunday Telegraph that the Speaker apparently breached the rules by saying he voted Remain and should quit. What do we think of this?
Well, the thing about, I mean, you must be happy, June, because you've got Remain voter.
He's my hero at the moment.
So you must be delighted. But the interesting thing about this is that there's been a video emerged of him saying that he voted Remain in the referendum, and speakers are supposed to be neutral even after they retire. And this comes with the back of him saying, you know, Donald Trump was a racist and sexist who shouldn't speak in Parliament. What's interesting about this is that we've just had 2 weeks of debate about Brexit in the Commons, and no MPs at that point raised, oh, I don't think he's behaving in a neutral manner. And now that this video's emerged, they're sort of going, oh, look, he's clearly not neutral. But the fact that we've had 2 weeks of debate and no one raised any issues suggests to me that actually he is able to do his job. But the question does remain, you know, should a speaker be coming out and saying these things? I mean, it wasn't like this is the run-up to the referendum he was saying
it's
this.
done, the vote's done.
And it was in front of students, that's right, isn't it?
Yeah.
Rather than like
Exactly.
a prominent...
Well, he's never hid the point that he was a Remainer, has he? He's always sort of...
he was neutral when it mattered.
He's never
read the point.
He's never said before who he voted, which way he voted.
Who's the ones that are making themselves busy about it?
Well, there's Tory backbenchers. I mean, even though he is a Tory MP, a lot of the Tories don't like him.
But he's not really, is he?
Yeah. A lot of the Labour people like him, and he's got his fantastic...
Well, he's his own man, I think, and that's refreshing in politics. There aren't enough people who are authentically themselves, and I think he is. So for me, he's my hero.
Well,
everything he did with Trump works for me.
Another person who's certainly authentically themselves is Diane Abbott. This is an extraordinary story in the Mail on Sunday, isn't it? David Davis blasted for this text message saying that he's not blind, so therefore he wouldn't hug Diane Abbott.
I think, Sophie, what you said earlier in your interview with Chucker was totally spot on. This is absolutely sexist, it's misogynistic, and I think actually in 2017 it's downright disrespectful that a member of the cabinet would talk about another politician, especially somebody who's had a career as long as hers. And I think that he should not only apologise, but actually he needs to come out and make a proper statement about this.
Is there an argument, though, that this is just a text message?
Well, I was going to say, don't you think it's a little bit of tongue-in-cheek, a little bit of fun?
No, I don't, Charlie. I hope you're not sending text messages like this.
Well, not to her, that's for sure.
No,
but what I'm trying to say is it's a little bit of fun, isn't it? I mean, you know, what's the big deal? I mean, he's, you know, I don't really, you know what I mean?
But if she
would you be offended by it?
I would. If she was a man, he would not be sending that kind of text. Well, no, he shouldn't even be trying to hug her anyway. You know, they're there to talk about
I was in the bar. I was there in the bar on Wednesday night. I was there when...
The eye on what actually happened.
Yeah, I was there when David Davis was there, and I was there when Dan Abbott was there. Alas, I did not see the incident. But spirits...
You missed the story,
I
though.
missed the story.
Yeah, you missed the scoop.
As my boss told me. But spirits were very high in that bar on Wednesday. A lot of Tories who don't normally go there were there because they were cheering. A lot of Labour MPs who don't normally go to the bar were there sort of drowning their sorrows at being forced to back Brexit. So it was quite a funny atmosphere in the bar last night. But you talked about disrespectful. I mean, look at the headline here. These cool texts about Corbyn's ex. Not about Diane Abbott.
Not about Diane Abbott, about Corbyn's ex. This is what we're talking about, Charlie.
I mean, the man's had a drink and he's having a bit of fun. Honestly, I think you're taking that out of context, honestly.
But he's saying that he's not blind, therefore he wouldn't kiss her. That's just rude. You wouldn't want someone to say that about you.
He's probably being honest. Is he not allowed to have his own view?
Who leaked the text?
Not like that.
If I was David Davis, I'd know who those texts want.
Well, that's not his friend, that's for sure. Whoever
this is the mystery, isn't it?
As I say, it's got to be a great advert for that SpecSave, hasn't it, really? Because he should have gone to SpecSave.
Oh, God.
Right, let's move on, shall we? We were sticking with the Daily Mail, I think, aren't we? Theresa May, who apparently has told Remainers from the Conservative Party, I'm not a crazed Brexiteer and I won't go jumping off a cliff. So this is a kind of reassurance, is it, that she's giving out to some concerned people in her own party?
Well, you know, I think she's giving out the wrong message now. I mean, the Lords are now saying that they'll vote on the article or vote on this bill if that they can keep the I think all these sort of people from the EU still in here, the ones that was here, you know, prior to the referendum. So, you know, they're adding their bit to it, and I don't see that she can not give in to them, if I'm being perfectly honest. I mean, that was the point of bringing the MPs involved, or the Lords and the MPs involved in it. They've got an opinion.
Do you think she's doing a good job then on Brexit?
Do I? No, I'm a strong Remainer, and no, I don't. No, certainly not at all. But, you know, the deal here is that she's got to get everyone else involved in. This is why we had the court case. They're now getting involved. She needs to listen to people and hopefully that, you know, there's a lot of people that are uncertain here that are here, and have they got to go back? Have they still got a job? You know, we need to clarify that, and I think this is something that's got to be done.
The other thing I'm quite interested in is what's happened to the Conservative resistance. We had these Conservative Remainers who seemed like they were going to cause a complete, you know, ruckus in the Commons, and they've all rolled over. What do you think is going on?
Well, absolutely, it's disappeared like mist. I think a lot of them have decided they don't want the aggro. I think a lot of them are scared of being accused of being enemies of the people and that kind of stuff. And I think a lot of them actually I mean, I'm here with two Remainers, so I'll put the Leave side forward here. I think most of them are just respecting the referendum result. We had the arguments, they're respecting.
I'm going to disagree.
They ain't got the balls, have they?
I'm with Charlie on this. And actually, don't you think part of the problem is because those Tory MPs don't have an opposition to support them? Jeremy Corbyn came out, 3-line whip. So therefore, what are they supposed to do if the Labour MPs aren't going to back them up in the Commons? So,
that's right.
You know...
I mean, jobs at stake, isn't it?
It's just a disaster.
It shouldn't be like this, but, you know, I think they're running scared.
Yeah, I think you're right, but I think a lot of them would argue that they're just representing the result of the referendum.
No, but 48% voted. That's a lot of people. 16 million people voted to remain.
Only needed a majority of one, didn't it? Only needed a majority of one. If it had been the other way, though, if it had been the other way...
We would have accepted it, and we would have said that actually the negotiations also needed it to factor in those who voted to leave. So what my point is, the negotiations right now only factor in those that want to leave. There's no consideration for the 48% that wanted to stay.
Exactly, but they keep
and that's a mistake.
They keep using this term, will of the people. The will of the people was 27% of the population voted. That's not the will of the people.
But at the same time, it was a in-out referendum.
Well, of course.
You know, two sides, and there's one winner.
We accept that.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
Reluctantly.
You accept it, but you quite like some Remainer Tories to sort of kick a bit more of a stink, especially on the EU migrant rights. I think that is something which I think that Theresa May, you know, she says, I'm not a crazed Brexiteer. She could quite easily prove that by making this unilateral promise.
Precisely.
She hasn't done that.
She hasn't.
I think there's 148 amendments been made to the bill, and that's the important thing. We need to get it right and leave on the best terms.
OK. Well, thank you very much, the three of you, for sharing your views. Very lively paper review this morning.